the Ann Arbor Starbucks. Never will you find a more dangerous place in history to have been. Ever.
In the late 60s, girls of Ann Arbor were stalked by fear and terror. Before it was a Starbucks, this coffee establishment belonged to the Dunkin' Donuts Corporation. On the 8th of June 1969, at 4 o'clock on a quiet Sunday morning, a Detroit news truck driver had spotted a girl matching the description of Alice Kalom drinking coffee inside. A block away, there had been a party at the popular Depot House the previous night. The Depot House was a former railway station, and today on the site is a children's playground. But back then, it was a popular hangout hall for University of Michigan students like Alice Kalom. After the Depot House and the coffee shop, Alice was never seen alive again. At around 3:15 on the Monday, 7 miles out of Ann Arbor, a couple of teenage boys were taking a shortcut through an empty farm. But that afternoon, it wasn't empty. Lying on her back was the naked body of Alice Kalom. Even though stabbed through the heart and all over, the cause of death had been a gunshot to the head. What was more worrying was that this was not the first Michigan murder. For the past 2 years, a serial killer had rode the leafy streets of once perfect Ann Arbor, leaving 5 dead girls in his wake. Most were university students, killed the same brutal way, and left on farmlands, sometimes for weeks before being found. The Keystone Cops were bumbling policemen back in silent film slapsticks, and the media and the public began to call the Ann Arbor Police Department that unflattering name. Unfairly, I think. When 18-year-old freshman Karen Sue Bieneman was found dead in a gully off Huron River Drive, the cops devised an intrepid plan. After long suspecting the killer had returned to the previous crime scenes when the body had been left undiscovered for a time, they decided to keep the death of the latest victim a secret. They even considered leaving the body there, but eventually compromised on using a store mannequin from this JCPenney's. The cops hid amongst the shrubs as darkness fell, and the mosquitoes rose. The 2 officers soon spotted someone running, but perplexingly yelled out, "Stop in the name of the law," allowing the man to run away. Luckily, at the morgue, more substantial progress had been made. Found on her clothes were various shades of blonde hair clippings. Karen's hair was brown. Had she been stored in a barber shop? While the cops scoured hairdressers, the real hero of the story came home from a vacation with his wife and 2 boys. Michigan State Police Corporal David Leake found things in his house not as they should be. He was baffled at why his basement floor had been painted. His nephew, who had been house-sitting, denied having even been down there. Leake scraped the black paint to reveal blood splatter. He quietly called fellow police officers into his house to examine the basement. Short blonde hairs were found scattered in basement corners because Leake's wife would cut the boy's hair down there. The house-sitting nephew, John Norman Collins, was arrested. An Eastern Michigan University student, he resembled a motorcyclist who had given the last victim, Karen Sue Bieneman, a lift from a wig shop. What really cracked the case open was neutron activation analysis, which identified trace material in elements by using a nuclear reactor. In this case, samples of hair found on the last victim, along with hair from Leake's basement, were bombarded by high-intensity neutrons, making them radioactive, which allowed measurement of the elements and comparison of the sources. 12 elements from both sources of hair matched. They came from the same source. Thus, Because John Norman Collins was the only one who had access to the Leakes' home, he was found guilty of the murder of Karen Sue Bieneman. Some say very circumstantial, but prosecutors and police suspected him of all the co-ed murders. And I genuinely agree. In prison in 1980, Collins changed his last name to Chapman, his mother's maiden name, but also that of John Lennon's murderer of that same year, almost as if he wanted everybody to hate him a little bit more. But this video wasn't made because of him, it was made for the victims, the poor girls of Ann Arbor. But I'm sure I've been hopeless telling this story, so I really recommend Edward Key's great book. It's a page-turner. And he changes the names to protect the innocent. So I haven't really spoiled anything if you read it. It's hard to take out in public though, because people think you're crazy.